Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to Trail Talk. I know it's a different day, it's a different time, but we have a very good reason for that. And that reason is do you just go by Joe?
I go by Joe.
Okay, Mr. Joe Brown. Now, I know that seems like a super common name. So if you're going to look him up by E, the letter E, Joe Brown. But I'm so glad you could join us today. Joe is, he's an author. This is how I met him. He was bringing some of his books to go into our gift shop. And so we started kind of chatting and just realized that number one, he's going to make a great Trail Talk guest. And number two, we have our National Day of the Cowboy flag here, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But Joe, you don't live in Oklahoma anymore.
No, I do not.
You live in New Mexico now.
Correct.
But you started out here. So introduce yourself to the viewers, kind of tell them where you're from, where you grew up, things like that.
All right. Well, native Oklahoma, born in Ada. My wife was as well, my sister, her siblings too. Grew up mostly in Shawnee and Cushing, Oklahoma, up by Stillwater. That's where I graduated high school, and in Oklahoma State's where I started my college days, and eventually met my wife and ended up in the Air Force, utilizing the education I had at the time. And then the Air Force sent me to a whole lot of schools. So I'm your classic educated idiot. Well, you heard that term, 448 semester hours in the classroom.
Oh, that's a lot of
And
hours.
close to 10 universities.
Wow.
They kept sending me away. I tested airplanes for the Air Force for most of that military career and for all of my civil service career. Out at Edwards Air Force Base, some of you may recognize that name, the space shuttle started out there and did its landings and so forth. And I was very fortunate to be the boss of the crew of the Air Force folks that worked with NASA to create the space shuttle network.
Oh, very nice.
And we worked the first 6.
That's pretty cool. Cutting edge. I mean, like big time, right? It was very cutting edge back then.
Very much so. Matter of fact, my career, I was very, very lucky. Right place, right time. You know, I'm just a skinny kid from small town Oklahoma. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
But the fact is, me and whatever crew I was in charge of at the time, over my career, we did about 10 things for the first time in history.
Wow, that is so cool.
But that's out of Edwards. That's the
Right.
edge of technology.
Right.
That's where it's all supposed to happen. For those of you that don't know, there's a guy by the name of Chuck Yeager, and I had the pleasure of meeting him several times. But Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier out at Edwards, and ever since then, it's just been a location and just a whole lot of firsts have happened.
So is that like one of those assignments that if you're in the Air Force, you hope you get to go to Edwards?
A lot of folks do, absolutely. Now, there's other places that are great, but yes, Edwards is a place most guys and gals that show up there, most, not all, but most, ask. And you don't always, I ask, you know, and you don't always get it.
Right.
But if you have the right tickets and maybe what the Air Force is looking for that type of work.
It probably depends on what they're working on at the moment.
Yeah.
Things like that.
But then you could end up there like I did. And I know this was true when I retired for good in 2010, but it may still be true. Every operational aircraft in the Air Force and several of the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps, and even some of our allies have aircraft that I have fingerprints on.
Wow, that is really
And where else can you have something like that?
true, so true. So Edwards Air Force Base is located,
North of Los Angeles. It's actually
Okay.
part of the Air Force Base is in Los Angeles County. It's
Okay.
also part of it's in Kern County because it's out on the far west edge of the Mojave Desert.
so Oklahoma Boy ends up in Southern California,
31 years.
31 years.
Mhm.
And then you left.
And we retired, my wife and I both retired out of Edwards. She was a civil servant out there as well. And we moved to Albuquerque. That's Albuquerque Metro is where I live now. And that was driven by grandkids.
The deciding factor.
You know, such a magnet.
Oh, yeah.
And we have not regretted that. We could have come back to Oklahoma. I mean, we have a lot of family still here. I will see a cousin later today. I saw cousins over the weekend, and I also saw some good friends that I made during my high school days. And
Yeah,
stuff like
but
that too.
Driving from Albuquerque, I mean, you're just I-40
Yep.
straight into Oklahoma, so.
I tell you what, I've driven that so many times. I just get in my car and I go sick. And the car
Right.
knows exactly what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I met a friend who lives in the Phoenix area,
Mhm.
and we met up in Albuquerque.
Oh, yeah, that'd be about
it was-
halfway for both of
Yeah,
us.
yeah, it was a very fun weekend we spent together. We hadn't
Yeah.
seen each other in a while. So yeah, Albuquerque is a pretty neat place.
Well, it is. There's a lot to do there,
Mhm.
especially if you enjoy anything to do with history.
Right.
I mean, there's a ton of it there. I'm sure while you were there, I hope you went to Old Town.
Yeah, oh, yes,
Yeah.
we did.
Old Town Albuquerque is kind of a cool place.
It is. There were also, I mean, from the street, the ladies who put their handmade
Oh,
jewelry, you
yeah.
know, on the blankets
You
to the very high end, you know, Western or Native American style of jewelry.
Oh,
And some of the, I mean, it was just a vast range of all kinds of, you know, price,
Oh,
things that anybody could go there and find something.
just in jewelry. Now, there's.
That's right, yeah.
There's other
mean,
things too, but just in
art,
jewelry, you can spend $20 or you can spend 20,000.
We had a really good cup of iced coffee there too, at a cool little coffee shop, but
Yeah.
we digress,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
digress. Anyway, so you're in Albuquerque, been retired for a while.
Yes, and as I was transitioning, well, my entire life, I've had music as part of it. I mean, even as far back as like in grade school, junior high, high school. Up my senior year, I was the high school king of the chorus, if you will. Now, I was a jock too, so I'm kind of a weird guy from that standpoint. I played sports and got a professional contract offered me out of high school, and I went a different direction, but I played sports, but music has been part of it. My wife and I were in a master chorale out in Southern California, but toward the end of our time out there, I went to a place called Santa Clarita to a cowboy festival. And that's the largest, most, I know it's the largest from the standpoint of attendance. And probably from prestige, it's certainly in the top 2 or 3, because there are some other places like Elko and so forth that are historically very big. But I was exposed to Western music, and I heard from the stage something that harkened back to my days as a kid. I was very influenced by, and this is going to segue into the book, but very influenced by my maternal grandfather, who was a cowboy. By the time I knew him, he was no longer a cowboy, working cowboy. He was an older guy. He was my granddad.
Right.
But he would sing. And I would follow him around the pastures and him singing, "Little Joe the Wrangler will wrangle nevermore." That's a song from over 100 years ago.
Right.
And right from the stage there in Santa Clarita back in 2009, I heard that song and I go, And on the way home, my sister was there as well, and so my wife and my sister and I were in the car, and I looked over at my sister and I go, "We could do that." She said, "Yeah." Well, out of that came a trio singing Western music and doing harmony work, like the Sons of the Pioneers.
Oh,
As a
love
matter-
Jesus, Sons and Pioneers.
In fact, we did a lot of their work, and my wife was a music major and could write arrangements. And so she
Oh.
arranged it for a male leading voice, female harmonies, and we were pretty good.
So what was the name of your trio?
Oklahoma-based,
Uh-huh.
California, Oklahoma-based, Red River West.
Oh,
We-
I
we-
like
We
that.
figured we were from the home of the Red River, but we lived
You
well
lived
west.
west. Better than being like something Okies, right?
Well, I don't, you know what?
I'm playing. I'm
I
playing.
know.
I like that Red River West.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a clever name.
Well, anyway, worked for us.
I bet.
Our last gig before Linda and I retired and moved to Albuquerque, which kind of ended the lifetime of the trio.
Yeah.
Our last gig was for Paramount Studios at the 75th anniversary of Republic Pictures.
Oh, wow.
And there was a few cowboy guys there.
So you guys
Still.
kind of became pretty well known in just a year?
We actually were, yeah, we were on, and I'll tell you what, it had, okay, some of it was that we had a little talent, okay?
Uh-huh.
Certainly we did, and maybe still do, because we just did a program about a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
But, first one in a long time, but, we became close friends, and she's still alive today, with the grand dame of Western music. Her name is Marilyn Tuttle.
Mhm.
She and her husband Wesley were part of forming what became Western Music Association. And Wesley and Marilyn were close friends with Dale and
Roy
Roy
Rogers.
Rogers. I don't think we probably didn't even have to say the last name.
Yeah.
Roy and Dale,
Yeah.
Dale and Roy.
Yeah.
I say Dale and Roy because Marilyn and Wesley.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, and he actually sang with the Sons from time to time. He had a full-time gig, if you will, as the music director for the most popular variety show in Los Angeles back in the day. And they primarily, a lot of it was Western music. Because let's face it, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, Western music was at its peak, probably
Right.
from the standpoint of influence.
Right.
Now, right now, there are more people singing and writing Western music than any time in history, which I'm happy about.
But there are probably more people writing and singing other genres of music as well. So
But
it's,
anyway, so Marilyn kind of took us under her wing, and because we were doing harmony, and she was a harmony singer.
Mhm.
And matter of fact, the Western Music Associations, and it's called the International Western Music Association now, but the top award every year given for harmony performance is called the Marilyn Tuttle Award.
Oh, very nice.
So every
Yeah.
Thursday evening, Joe and Linda and Jency got in the car and drove down to San Fernando Valley to Marilyn's home, and we sang and had dinner with Marilyn for practically every week.
Mhm.
And she really was great. I have some great stories
Well,
about
what
that.
a fun little
Yeah.
addition to your journey.
Yeah, and then coming out of that, for years, I had been bugged. Joe, you've had so many wonderful things happen to you. Are you writing this stuff down? And so eventually, in 2018, I said, okay, I'll start writing stuff down. But I hadn't really started yet. And at Christmas time, no, it was Thanksgiving time. We were at our son's house, grandkids, remember? Now we're-
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And my daughter-in-law comes up and she says, would you like to go to a meeting of writers that I've been invited to? Because she was dabbling herself
Mhm.
in it. And I said, well, yeah. Well, at that get together, I met some folks and that started me taking classes at UNM, continuing ed,
Right,
in writing. And in 2019, it all started. And I started by doing the memoir type thing, because that's where you kind of share your life experiences and so forth. I'm doing well, won a couple of awards and so forth. And then as COVID was starting to hit, I had begun to put together a storyline based on my maternal grandfather that I mentioned earlier that was very influential. His name was Clarence Ashley Kelly. And my granddaddy was a cowboy on the 101 ranch.
oh, wow,
By Ponca City.
right, right.
And so that story began to take form, and as COVID took over, well, we for a while we couldn't go anywhere, right, folks? I mean,
Right,
we
yeah.
were kind of locked down for several months there. I just spent that time writing, and as we were coming out of COVID, and let's say late 2020, early 2021, I was beginning to talk to a publisher. And we went on contract, and August of 22, The Cowboy's Destiny came out.
And here we have it, right here.
And,
Hey, Emery, zoom in on this cover for me a little bit,
and
please.
the wonderful things that have happened because of that. Well, the book itself has been a bestseller here in Oklahoma.
Right? I saw on your website, it was on the top 10 bestseller list
Yes,
here.
yes.
So,
And I think the Tulsa World, actually, I think it was the Tulsa World, it was #2.
wow,
So
that's pretty fun.
I'm kind of pleased.
Well, you should be, you should be. Now, it's called a saga,
Yes,
which makes one think that there would be more than one book.
well, when I went on contract with my publisher, I had 400,000 words written in this story. Now, that is a typical novel,
Right.
80,000 words, give or take.
Okay, yeah.
So
So you have enough for roughly 5
already
novels. Written,
written,
yeah.
now drafted, of course, but written.
Mhm.
And I have in my mind, and a couple of notes here and there, enough to, if people are enjoying the story, of course, I could put together probably 10 to 20
Oh, my,
novels.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was just thinking. So you were just writing and you just kept writing.
Because it was flowing.
Yeah, but if you broke it down, then it would be easier to take one thread and just really go with it and build on it more and make one book out
Oh.
of, you know.
You-
So I can see where that could really expand
Oh, yeah.
how much there
As a
is.
matter of fact, book 2 is already at my publisher. He's working on the first phase of editing,
Mhm,
and we're targeting it to come out at the end of the year.
mhm,
Could be Christmas, could be January. I'm betting on January.
yeah.
But that would be book 2. I already have put together starting with some of that was written back then, but I've put together approximately 70,000 words for book 3
Mm,
already.
mhm.
And I have Charlie and Susan. Charlie Kelly is loosely based on my granddad,
Okay,
and Susan is the young lady he comes across, and they fall for each other, but there's some complications. It's all in there, but
it's all in the book.
but let's just say that they fall for each other, they separate and go their separate ways. He continues on his journey to 101 Ranch to see if he could become a cowboy there. And she goes home, and they meet in Oklahoma in Elmore City.
Not
And
too far from here.
not too far from here. And she goes back to Kansas City. I will tell you this, folks. At the time they separate and so forth, yeah, they fall for each other and so forth. But the fact is, one of the key things that will influence the story, and especially in book 2, 3, 4, whatever, is that she's the only child in the story now, the only child of the richest man west of the Mississippi. And Charlie doesn't even know. So how that works out is kind of interesting too.
Oh, fun. What a fun little twist is in there.
And the second book, working title, is A Cowboy's Gusher.
Okay.
Up to the 101, they got in the oil business.
Uh-huh.
And so in my storyline, Charlie does some great things as a cowboy, but he proves that he handles himself well. And he's a high school graduate. And in the first 20, 30 years of the of the 20th century, a high school education is quite a bit of education.
Right.
Not a lot of people graduate high school. So between his education and what he showed, one of the Miller brothers that owns the 101, yeah, he takes a liking to Charlie and brings him in and has him work for him, and he ends up working in the oil business for him up there. That leads to options.
Right. Oh, what a great storyline. I'm liking that. So when you wrote this, like at the end, is it kind of a cliffhanger, like the story is unfinished? Or could this have been just a standalone book?
It can absolutely be a standalone book, but I think I leave enough happening. Well, as a matter of fact, this is a funny story. I was back here, well, actually, I forget the dates now, but recently, I did a book signing in Tulsa and went from there to Fort Smith, and from there to Fayetteville, and back to Oklahoma City, and then out to Enid on a trip, signing the books and making new contacts and so forth. We're heading back home, and I think we were between Amarillo and the New Mexico state line, heading back to Albuquerque. Phone rings, my cell phone, and it's tied to my car, so I hit the button and hello, this is Austin Johnson. Do you remember me? Oh, yeah, I do. Well, we met in Enid. Yeah, I remember. Well, Joe, I know you said that your second book is not ready yet or whatever. He says, can you tell me when it's coming out? And I go, well, it'll be about January probably. And he said, oh, okay. He says, my wife's over here laughing. I haven't been much of a reader lately in my life. But he said, I started reading your book. And he said, I couldn't put it down. He said, I read half the book in the first sitting. He says, I want that second book.
He's ready for more.
And so I hope that's a combination of the fact that I told him it was the first in the series.
Right.
But also the fact that he liked it, he could see it was going someplace.
Exactly. Yeah. That there somehow it left him wanting more to the story.
Yeah. My publisher and I are pretty much committed to 5 books in this saga. And of course, that doesn't mean I won't write some other stuff. I was recently back at the Santa Clarita Cowboy Festival. They have a thing there called the Buckaroo Bookshop.
That's a great name.
Yeah, it is. And there was about 10 to 12 of us that were there as authors, invited in to be there. And I sat like this with for that weekend with a gentleman who's been in Hollywood for years. He lives out there. That's his livelihood. Screenwriter, director, producer, actor. I mean, he's done a little bit of all of it. We're talking about this book and also some of my short stories that are more like memoir. And he said, well, he said, Joe, that story of you and your hero Mickey Mantle, he said that sounds like a movie. The storyline you told me. He says, and I'll tell you right now, he says, you're Cowboy's Destiny. He said that does too. He said, you mentioned, Joe, you mentioned that you actually have a Hollywood connection. Tell me about it. Well, I told him that in 1997, Touchstone Pictures came out to Edwards to film a significant part of the movie Armageddon with Michael Bay, the director, Bruce Willis, Bob Thornton, and so forth. I was the technical advisor to Michael Bay for 30 days.
Wow.
And met all those people, spent all day with them, from, as my granddaddy would say, from can to can't with them, and got to be good, very friendly with them. Even a couple of things that I advised on turned out that's how they shot the scene. So I was kind of going, oh, I remember saying that. And it's kind of cool.
Well, what a wonderful experience.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Courtney, that was the guy at the festival. He said, you need to reach out to Michael. He says, Michael will remember you. He said, you spent 30 days together. And he said, in that movie, he said, he said, if he hadn't been a millionaire by that time, that made him many times a millionaire. And I said, well, okay, maybe. I don't know how to get a hold of him. I haven't talked to him for all these years. He says, I do. So he gave me some advice. And when I got back home, I followed it and called Michael Bay's office. And he was out making a movie. But I got to his gatekeeper. And her name is Mia. And she gave me some advice, and she says, well, Courtney was right. Michael will remember you. So, okay. And so she gave me advice on what to do and what to send, and she wanted the short stories too. So I put the package together and included some memorabilia copies. Not copies. Yeah. I had some paperwork and some other things, like the last day they did a party and they all signed autographs for me. I mean, it was all set up. I mean, I didn't ask for any of this. They did it. And so I had Michael's autograph, thank you for your help, blah, blah, on the movie and so forth. So I said, I've made copies of all that just to trigger his memory if he needed it. But anyway, and then I talked to her, Mia, a couple of days later, and she said, great package. It looks good. And she said, and Michael will see this. I said, well, wait a minute. What is your process? I don't even know what you guys do. I said, because this is my first experience doing something like this. And she said, well, Michael does have a part of his staff that kind of looks at stuff first. He doesn't look at everything. But he's going to want to look at yours.
Well, there you go. That's very encouraging.
So anyway, she said she'll let me know. But that's kind of fun.
That is fun. Wow. So I was just thinking about that part of your life and now. So did you own a cowboy hat before you started the Red River West? I mean, was this like something that was this part of how you dressed, or was this something that you grabbed hold of later?
I grew up like this. At least part of my time was like this because I was on and off a ranch or a farm or something as I grew up. But I grew up in a small town, city boy, if you will, in that sense.
Yeah.
So I also, wore the t-shirts and
Yeah.
chickens and stuff too. But as I went through my military time, I was predominantly either in uniform or in some gear that let me coach. I coached high school sports for a long time.
Okay.
At night when I was out at Edwards, because I was very fortunate, folks. Typically, a military member is going to move quite a bit,
Right.
more than he would have in his civilian life. But I was very fortunate. I did do some moving, but once out at Edwards, they tended to move me from test project to test project as opposed to base to base. So that gave me a period of time that allowed our two sons to grow up and graduate high school, and allowed my wife to create a civil service time and so forth. And during that time, I did not look like this very often.
Right.
Most of the time I was in a ball cap, coaching football or baseball at night, or going to night school or something like that. And then putting on either my uniform or in my civil service time, a business suit.
Right. So, does this feel like this is how it ought to be
Oh,
with a
this-
cowboy hat?
this seems so natural,
Yeah.
so natural.
Yeah.
I did not have to go through some metamorphosis as.
Right. Well, I mean, it looks like it is. It looks like it's natural. Not everybody
Yeah,
has that,
yeah.
and so that's why I was kind of curious about that. So I want to ask you about your book writing.
All right.
So what has been like, what was like the hardest, maybe there's a couple of things. What was the most difficult part of writing this book?
I would say that between what I had already in my mind, because of stories from my granddad, and then some of what I wanted to do from the standpoint of a story that was coming into my mind, blending that with the research required.
To make sure things were historically accurate, especially if you're talking about the 101. You had to be, it's a real place.
Now, it's a work of fiction, and I have a dear friend, Joe, up in Ponca City, who is the historian of the old 101 Ranch Old Timers Association.
Oh, okay.
Which I'm now a proud member of the 101 Old Timers Association.
Oh, there you go.
But Joe was really good to make sure that I understood things that happened out there and when. But I said, Joe, this is a work of fiction. I said, so everything that's in my storyline didn't have to happen. But if it did happen, it needed to be something that was reasonable, plausible, or could have happened.
Right.
At that time, at the ranch. He said, Joe, I'm good with that.
Okay, well, good.
Because I wasn't the first author he had worked with. One other gentleman really was working more of a nonfiction book. But Joe seemed to enjoy the fact that I was going to create something that was
with kind of the backdrop of the one.
Yes, and extremely careful. I was extremely careful to have the 101 in a good light.
Right.
It wasn't hard. Believe me.
Right.
Believe me, that wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
But I was careful to do that. As a matter of fact, in this book, there are people that really existed. The Miller brothers are characters in this. In book 2 and 3 and beyond, there are characters that are actual real people. All business. E.W. Marlin,
Mm-hmm.
former governor here,
Right,
oil man.
right.
He's in this book and he's in follow-on books. Uh, uh, let's see, Harry Sinclair, Sinclair Oil,
Sinclair Oil, yeah.
Bill Skelly, Skelly
Mhm.
Oil, J. Paul Getty,
Mhm,
Getty Oil.
mhm.
They're all in the story.
So those,
Not all of them aren't in this one, but they're in book
Right.
2.
right, so, recently I read Fire in Beulah, it was a few months ago.
Mhm.
And all of those people are in that book. In fact, there's a gathering at someone's home and they are all there together. Every one of the people that you named.
They were friends. They knew each other. If they didn't see, well, actually, Skelly, Sinclair, and Getty had rooms at the Hotel Tulsa.
Mhm,
And $1 million deals were done in the lobby of the Hotel Tulsa back
right,
in the day.
yeah,
Pahuska,
uh-huh,
the $1 million elm was up on Agency Hill there.
mhm,
And that's where the Osage properties were divvied up, if you will, rights were bought, or maybe even the property itself, but the mineral rights were auctioned off there.
yeah,
And which gave all men access to their property to go drill.
mhm,
And then they became rich and so did the Osage.
yeah,
But of course, there's some tragedy
Right.
in that too.
right, right.
But I'm just saying, that's all in the story.
So is this considered historical fiction?
It is, that's the perfect thing. Now, interestingly enough, there's like subcategories, right? Historical fiction, it is that.
Mhm,
It's a historical fiction that is Western oriented.
mhm,
It is historical fiction that has some romance in it
right.
and some action thriller kind of
Uh-huh,
stuff too.
mhm,
But it's predominantly a Western.
mhm.
But you know, you can do a Western unless there's a rustler.
Right,
You know.
gotta have, there has to be a few things, gotta have a cowboy, gotta have a horse,
Yeah,
gotta have a ranch,
Gotta have
gotta have a
Tony,
wrestler.
gotta have Tony.
There you go.
Well,
Oh, that's good. So,
it's all there.
so what, I can see that would be very demanding to, and especially with the desire to do it the right way. You know, so what was the easiest part for you?
The easiest part was to create Charlie Kelly in the mold of my granddad and the classic cowboy.
Mhm,
Now, this does not happen. This is not set, if you will, in the 1880. You know,
mhm.
so many Westerns are post-Civil War and so forth, and that's totally appropriate.
Right,
But I did not want to do that, and my granddaddy's stories gave me the fodder to use. And so writing it and putting a purely cowboy culture on it was simple for me.
mhm,
One of the reasons is it's the culture I live under.
mhm,
Man's word is his bond.
right,
Your handshake's as good as a contract.
right.
You
yeah,
got your buddy's back.
mhm,
Those kind of things are what makes a cowboy.
mhm,
You know, I would not typically do certain things out of courtesy that you would see from a cowboy. You
mhm,
tip your hat,
right,
and I'm wearing it now, you know, under a roof, but there's certain roofs you just don't wear your cowboy hat
Right.
under.
right.
It's okay, and a lot of things. Sit down at the barbecue house. So,
Yeah.
but it, you know,
Yeah.
there's just things that wasn't hard,
Mhm,
and I enjoyed doing it because in a lot of ways I've been told, Charlie was a really likable guy, and you wanted to see what in the world's going to happen to that guy next, kind of
Mhm.
thing.
So what year does this story begin?
Okay, in 1913,
Okay,
so Charlie's about 15 years old.
okay,
But it really kicks off and gets into full swing. You know, you kind of know where it's heading by
mhm,
1917. by around the third or fourth chapter. Now, the first 2 or 3 chapters are important.
Right.
They lay some groundwork, but it really kind of kicks into gear in the third and fourth chapters.
Yeah.
You learn then that Charlie's a dreamer. He's got some big plans, and he needs to get out on his own
Yeah. Yeah.
because he's still living at home
Right.
until 1917.
Okay.
He turns-
Interesting.
Yeah, he he's 18, turning 19.
Yeah.
Gotta go.
Yeah. So, are there any, like military storylines in here? I mean, that's right before, or that's World War I right there.
Yes, I had to cover that
Uh-huh.
just briefly. Charlie would be ideal in so many ways to have been in the military.
Uh-huh.
Guys, Charlie is like 6'4", 6'5", okay? Big dude.
Uh-huh.
My granddaddy was too.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? People just weren't as big as we are now.
Right. Yeah.
In 1900.
Mhm.
My granddad was born in 1898. And he grew to 6'4", 6'5". Big man, not fat,
Mhm.
just a big dadgum dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Charlie's the same way. Well, he gets called in for his physical, or, to be drafted.
Uh-huh.
And I needed Charlie for the story.
Yeah.
So Charlie had flat feet. And,
There you go.
and the doc and the person that was overseeing the process
Mhm.
agreed that him trying to carry equipment and stuff on a march across Europe, he
Mhm.
probably couldn't do it.
Mhm.
Well, we don't know, but he certainly made a great cowboy.
Yeah.
He certainly handled
Yeah.
himself, and he's a bright guy, so, but that's how he
Okay.
did not
Okay.
end up in the war.
That's those dates were just kind of triggering those
Yeah,
ideas
yeah.
in my head. So that sounds like a really great story. So, now when you go to, events, like you said, the Santa Clarita, what did you call it?
Cowboy Festival.
Cowboy Festival. Do you talk about your book? Do you sing? I mean, what is it that you do?
Well-
Because you're really on your website, there's a lot of reference to writers associations,
Yes.
writer like this, not rider, like you ride a horse. Right, and
Uh-huh.
correct. There was
Yeah.
another right I was trying to throw in there. So I'm just kind of curious what it is that you
All right.
do.
What I did there in Santa Clarita is pretty much what I do everywhere. I was asked to put on a program, about a 45-minute to an hour program, on the Saturday and the Sunday.
Mhm.
And so we went down to the location where that would happen. And my program, well, what I do is not typical of writers. Most writers don't sing and don't do music of any kind. Not all. I actually have some friends that are better at it than me, I think. But I do a blend
Uh-huh.
in my programs of talking about the book and singing. And I make it to where the songs I select fit with the storyline of the book or the time frame of the storyline or whatever. And that works out really well. So I'll start by just introducing myself and describing the book, a little bit about the book, and maybe a little bit of the background. Very little, but a little bit. And then I'll sing a song. The song that I typically use is Dawson. Dawson is a song written by Joyce Woodson, who's one of the founding members of the Western Music Association. She writes some beautiful stuff. She had a career in Nashville also, but she now lives in California on the family ranch. And in the song Dawson, there's a cowboy. He's basically singing to the cattle And the storyline is, well, I gotta go back home that wants me to stay home and work the mercantile. You know, and that's the worst thing in the world for a
Right.
cowboy.
Right, yeah.
Well, guess what? Charlie's a cowboy, and in Elmore City where he meets Susan and her husband, who ends up dying in a fire.
Mm.
Tell him everything. But they own a mercantile, okay?
Oh.
So see, that works,
Uh-huh,
you know? So, and there's another song that I oftentimes use, and it's called "I'd Like to Be in Texas." And it tells the story of an old guy sitting in the corner listening to a bunch of guys talk back in New York City. And they're clamoring about, and I like Chicago, I like New Orleans, and so forth. And finally they look over the old guy basically and say, well, where would you like to be? Well, I'd like to be in Texas in the roundup in the spring. And he tells a story that he was an old foreman on the cattle ranch, by calling of a key. You know, I'd
yeah.
like to be in Texas when the roundup in the spring. So and that song is from the era of the story.
Right. I think it's a very fun, very entertaining
So,
kind of program.
well, you know, I mean, I didn't want to be a writer that just would get up and read a chapter or something or whatever, which is too much, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't want to put people to sleep. But I wanted to entertain them as well. And then I'll get behind the table and sign books for people, which I do, of course.
Very
And
nice.
take the time to chat a little bit, whatever.
So I'm going to kind of jump forward now because July the 22nd is National Day of the Cowboy this year. And of course, we'll be having our annual celebration, free admission, a lot of activities going on. But Joe is going to be here with us that day.
Yes.
And we don't have everything, all the details ironed out yet. But I'm pretty sure you'll have some copies of your book.
I absolutely will.
Yeah, he'll have some copies of this book, and we'll be able to utilize some of his skills and talents that day, which is very exciting. I think that'll be very fun to have you here. Sure. So you're pretty active with National Day of the Cowboy. Would that be a good way to say that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I'm actually helping a small group of people put together the celebration in Albuquerque.
But the reason he's coming here, he'll be already in Oklahoma for a family reunion.
Yes.
So it worked out for us this year.
Well, right, and I told the folks, I said, I'm happy to help you put it together, make any contacts you need me to make and so forth. But I'm going to be in Oklahoma for a family reunion. And then I learn about this, they learn about me, and I say, you know what? I'm happy to be there. And I said, I can still get over to Ada.
Sure.
You know, toward the end of the day and still have fun with family. So I can do both.
Yeah, it's going to be a full day for you, but a very exciting time for us. Of course, the National Day of the Cowboy, international. It's an international.
It is.
I should have looked up the lady's name, the lady who really started
I
it.
should know that off the top of my head.
Boy, I almost said it. I almost said her name.
And
I interviewed her on Trail Talk
oh, good.
a couple of years back, whenever it was kind of still, it's COVID, how is this gonna work, kind of thing. Melanie?
It's
Gabrielle Giffords.
No.
well, it does start with an M, that's for sure.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
And that may be right.
I can't
But-
think of it.
But folks, this has been this National Day of the Cowboy or international. It's it's been around a long time. And this is not the first year I've been part of it, right? The first year you have
Oh,
either.
no.
And it is something that I know our focus in Albuquerque is gonna be on the cowboy culture.
Mhm.
We have three splendid writers that are gonna be talking about the Western from a writer's perspective and so forth, and both that write fiction and nonfiction. And the great entertainers that sing.
Mhm.
And then we have a wonderful MC, Bobby Jean Bell, and Bobby knows the founder of this too. And we were just talking about her. I mean, they're friends.
Yeah, I am apologizing right now that I cannot remember your name. I'm so sorry.
But anyway, Bobby will do a beautiful job of blending everything and making sure that the focus is what it really should be, the celebration of the cowboy and the cowboy culture.
Yes.
It's just, you know, I wish I could think of her name. But that's okay. That's okay.
Oh, no, it's not Bethany.
Oh, it is bad.
Bethany Barley.
Okay,
Bethany Barley.
okay.
I knew I'd have her in my phone. I'm so sorry, viewers, for doing that, but I wanted to get her name right. Bethany Barley.
Okay.
Anyway, so, our focus for this whole year is, diversity on the Chisholm Trail.
Mhm.
And we have a pretty new exhibit, and our summer education program is going to really focus on that. So I have a feeling we'll be talking about that because, it's not often portrayed or even written about in stories, but one of every 4 cowboys on the Chisholm Trail was either a black cowboy, a vaquero, or Mexican cowboy, or a Native American cowboy.
Exactly. And not everyone knows that.
No, they don't. And
That
so,
is absolutely true.
yeah, and so we, that's kind of well, like I said, it's been our focus for this year, kind of our theme for 2023. And anyway, I think it's a really important part of history that just gets bypassed sometimes. And so.
Well, I'm also the president of an organization called the New Mexico Westerners.
Mhm.
And it's a group of educators, historians, singer songwriters and stuff.
Right.
But a lot of people that just love the West.
Mhm.
And I thought it was so wonderful that it's been 2 years ago now, but we had a group come in and we meet and do a program every month from September to May, okay? And one of the programs that we did, we brought folks in that do the Buffalo Soldier thing.
Oh, portraying.
Yes. Yes, and so it was almost like a Chautauqua. It wasn't, but it was almost like that,
Right.
where they just take on the character.
Mhm.
Oh, man, it's so awesome
Yeah.
because a lot of people don't understand the term Buffalo Soldier
Right.
and so forth. But
Yeah.
anyway.
There's a
That's
man
right.
named Wallace Moore from Lawton,
Mhm.
and he's written a lot of books, but he does kind of a portraying like that. He has several characters. He has some super cool costumes,
Oh,
you know, but he'll be a cook on a cattle drive, or he'll be a buffalo soldier, or he'll be a black cowboy, or just whatever. He has, like I said, several books that are super interesting. But I mean, I'm the historical interpreter here, so I kind of get into that a little bit.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's fun.
Talking about a cookie,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell you a story about that?
Sure.
All right. My granddad
Uh-huh.
out on the 101 on one of the gathers, they evidently the cookie got sick and they just had to send him back to headquarters. So that morning, the foreman comes over and kind of hollers, "Wake up, we got a problem here. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
Cookie's sick. Any you step in?" Well, now my granddad had been taught taught to cook by his grandma.
Mhm.
During a period when grandma came in, when my granddad's mom was under the weather.
Mhm.
She was sick for a while.
Mhm.
And so grandma came in and helped out, and she taught Charlie how to, actually taught Clarence
Yeah.
how to cook.
Uh-huh.
So, he had mentioned that to one of his buddies. Granddad said, I kept quiet. All of a sudden, here comes his buddy, Kelly Ken. Kelly Ken soda.
Oh, that was really good then. So that, I had no idea, no idea.
So my granddad stepped in and he cooked, and the Cowboys wanted him to just stay a cook. And of course, my granddad, part of the deal, and he said, okay, I'll do it, but boss, please put me back on a horse. And
Right.
he said, okay, just get us through this together. I promise you, I'll put you back on, because you're a good cowboy.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give you up, but if you can help. So anyway, that's how that went. And I put a little bit of that in the book, but here's the cute part too.
Uh-huh.
I've got some dear friends that are great songwriters, as you can imagine. And 4 of them were putting together a songwriting workshop. And I went to it.
Uh-huh.
It was Jim and Doug, and Mariam and Randy. And Randy had another one of them that had a great career in Nashville. But anyway, so we're going through the thing at the workshop, and I'm putting down something that I've been working on. And it was called The Cookie,
Mhm.
and so it was about this story that I just shared about
Mhm. Right.
becoming the cookie. That's what the song was going to be about. Well, Jim came around and he gave me some ideas, and we went on, and Doug, he said, yeah, this got to make it, Jim, okay, and he gave me a couple of ideas. Martin come in, he says, yeah, I agree with them, but he said, you know what, he says, Joe, he says, this line here, this Kelly Can line, he said, that's the name of the song, not the cookie.
Yeah, that's the money right there.
He said, I said, okay. So
Yeah.
I'll start it. Then Randy comes in. And Randy goes, well, you know what? You've got some good advice here. He said, I agree with Jim and Doug. And he said, and I think Martin's right. He said, it should be called Kelly Can. He said, well, okay, what can I help you with? I said, well, I'm stuck.
Uh-huh.
This is where I am. I'm struggling to go beyond what you have here. And he says, okay, Joe, this is my advice.
Mhm.
He said, anytime I get stuck on a song, he says, I step away from it. And then I come back and I write the story. Every
Mm.
song should be fundamentally, especially cowboy song, should
Right.
be fundamentally a story.
Right.
So he says, write the story. And then out of that, you'll probably get your song.
Mhm.
Okay, well, the next day, I start writing. And this all was happening, this workshop around 2018, 2019.
And so this is what came out of the song?
Yes.
Oh my
And Edie,
goodness.
here's the funny part. I haven't finished the song, but I've got enough written for 5 novels.
That is funny. That is.
And that's where
great.
Kelly came from as well.
That is good. You know what? I think that sounds like a great place for us to end this conversation.
Okay, sure.
I think that takes us full circle. But viewers, you can have a chance to meet Joe, talk to him. You can tell he's got a bazillion stories, which I think we could sit and I could listen to stories all day long. But come by, plan to come here. You can come to the Heritage Center anytime because we have copies of the book in the gift shop. So you could get one. And are they autographed? Oh, yes, I thought they were. I thought I saw that when I met you, you were autographing them.
Yeah.
He's autographed all the books. And so bring it back with you to National Day of the Cowboy, take a picture of it with it. I
Yeah.
mean,
Absolutely.
just plan to put that on your calendar, July the 22nd. And look up E. Joe Brown. I mean, that's literally the website.
ejoebrown.com.
Yeah, exactly. How easy is that? So, Joe, thank you so
bet.
much for coming. It's just been a delight talking to you today, very much.
My pleasure, and I had fun.
Good, good. That's what counts.
That's what.
Yeah, so, it's time for us to say happy trails together.
It is.
Yeah, okay. Happy
Trails to you until we meet again.
I'm
Happy
not
trails,
singing
folks.
it. Happy trails.